Alright, hello. Welcome to yesterlore. I'm just setting some final things up right now, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with what we're going to do today. Alright, so this is yesterlore number 4, and today we are going to look at some letters. This first thing we're going to look at is not exactly a letter, actually, but it is addressed to someone, and I'll explain what it is that we're going to be reading. Tonight's yesterlore might be a little shorter than the last few have, just because I didn't have enough time to prepare that much to read tonight. So we'll see how long it takes. We might not end up taking the full time slot tonight. But I have prepared to look at 2 different pieces of writing in Old English. And I'll explain what the first one is, but before that I just want to give some updates about scheduling and stuff. So if you tuned into or watched my last conlang with me, it went well over time. That probably won't happen too often, I hope. I don't foresee it being very realistic, actually. But there is going to be a new time on Thursdays from 5:30 to 8 rather than 5 to 7:30, to kind of match up better with yesterlore timing on Fridays. The Saturday time is going to be in the morning again tomorrow for conlang with me, although that might not stay the case, and Saturday conlang with me might not even continue for very long. It might just be a Thursday night thing, but we will see how things turn out. All of that will be updated on my Twitch schedule as I determine what is going to happen. So stay tuned for that. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get started with just a description of what we're going to be reading first. So the first thing we're going to be reading is something that, when you hear what it's called, sounds very boring. And it is a preface to a translation of Pope Gregory II's pastoral care. I think it's Pope Gregory II. Pope Gregory I. There we go. Pope Gregory I. And it's a work called, often it's called Regulae Pastoralis, which is usually translated as pastoral care or something like that, or pastoral law. And we're not reading that document. We're not reading pastoral care, whether in Latin or in the translation that this person did. Who is this person? Who wrote this? We actually know. We actually, thankfully, have a name for the author of this, which doesn't happen that often in Old English writing. We have lots of anonymous texts. But this text was written by King Ælfréd the Great. King Ælfréd the Great was ruling in the late 800s. He was the King of Wessex. And he's credited with saving England from Danish invasion. So that's one of the reasons why he's called the Great. Another reason he's called the Great, Ælfréd, is he did a lot of writing and did a lot to promote literacy, at least amongst learned people in England during the late 800s. And some of that was through translation. He did a lot of translation. And this text that he translated, he has a preface to. And his preface is addressed to someone. We're going to see who it's addressed to in a little bit. But what makes this text interesting is it doesn't just talk about, the importance of the text that he's translating, but it talks a good deal about why he translated this text at all. Why bother? Because in the context of medieval, like Western medieval Europe, most things are written in Latin. Most literature that is written down is written in Latin, especially if it be of a literary or religious nature. If it's for religious purposes or scientific purposes or whatever it happens to be, it tends to be written in Latin. So this text that he's translating was written in Latin. Why translate it? Well, he's going to explain his reasoning as to why he translated it. And that's what makes this interesting. This text is King Ælfréd explaining why he's bothering to translate this Latin text, which is a kind of text that would tend to be in Latin. Why bother translating it? So that's the first thing we're going to read. And we might not read the whole thing because it's rather long, at least compared to some of the other stuff we've read thus far. We're just going to read some highlights. But we're also going to notice that it is in prose. It's not in poetry. Much like last week's reading from the Yereva text, it is in prose, which is nice. So, we're going to go ahead and see who is this addressed to. I need to take care of something real quick. Sorry, something just came up. I guess while I'm taking care of this, I'll keep talking. So, a lot of the stuff that we have from the late 800s is actually coming directly from Ælfréd the Great. And an interesting thing about his writing is it's coming from an early West Saxon period. Later West Saxon is the dialect that a lot of our surviving Old English texts are written in. Because it became the standard in the later part of the Anglo-Saxon period. So a lot of the Old English texts that we have are in late West Saxon. Ælfréd is writing in an earlier form of West Saxon, which has some different features to it that I might point out as we're looking at the Old English. One of them is that a lot of the places where we usually see eo, the sound eo, are spelled eo. Not all of them, but a lot of them are spelled eo, as that was still a pronounced sound that it ends up merging with eo later in Old English. But we see a lot more of it in this earlier West Saxon period. Trying to think of some other things. There's a lot of a vowels where we typically see u later in Old English. So that is another sort of strange thing. And there's also a lot of O before N's that would typically be A. And I'll point out some examples of that as well. Another strange thing is there's a lot of I, things that are typically I, or I guess this actually just goes with EO, IO thing. But there are quite a few examples of IO where we'd expect EO, or just I. I think I've noticed some examples in earlier earlier West Saxon Old English, where I'll see an IO where I just expect a normal I. in later Old English. Sorry, it's a thing I'm trying to take care of. My computer's being very laggy right now. Don't know why, but it's happening. All right, I'm back. So, before we get into this, there's one more thing I want to cover, and that's where am I looking at this at? So we've looked at a few different sources for this Old English stuff that I've been looking at. We looked at some facsimiles of the Exeter book. We looked at a facsimile and transcription of the Yereva text. What we're going to be looking at today is on a really, really cool resource called Old English Aerobics. I'm going to open up a new tab just to show you how cool this site is. I should have it, seeing some examples of it here that are bookmarked, but I don't think I actually have the site itself. Let's type in the URL, englishaerobics.net. There we go. So yeah, it's oldenglish.aerobics.net is the URL. And it's this really cool site. It's a little off right now. I'm going to widen my screen. See, the reason I have made it a bit more narrow than usually is just because I keep finding that my camera is covering text as I'm trying to read it. So I'm just trying to avoid that. But it looks a lot nicer when it's not in such a squished window. But here it is, Old English Aerobics. And there are a lot of different things you can find here. Here, this is a translation of Alice in Wonderland into Old English. It's a really great resource. And if you go to Anthology, which isn't the only thing they have there, you'll see that they have lots of texts in Old English. Again, it's kind of hard to read with this reduced window, but we have lots of poetry and other texts here. And a lot of them have sound, so you can click on them and they will be read aloud in Old English, which is cool. But the other cool thing about this site, the thing that I really like about this resource is that it has hover text. So I can click on a word in Old English and it will give me the gloss of the word. So it will say what is the word in its sort of base form, because often in Old English it'll be a declension of a word or a conjugation of a word. It'll give the base form that this is a declension of. It'll say the meaning. It'll give grammatical information, like this is a demonstrative pronoun, and it means this. It'll give a translation, and it will explain what specific form the people who made this website think that this form is. And they're often, more often than not, they're correct. I tend to agree with their parsing. There are some places where it's kind of a hard guess, and so different scholars disagree on what a particular word is or how it should be interpreted, but I tend to agree with them. There's some good people who are making this website. So this one is a feminine nominative singular, and it's feminine because the word that comes after it, bulk, is also feminine. Bulk means book. That's where we get the word book from. So it's theos bulk, this book. So that's really cool. So if there's a word that you come across and you're like, wait, what the heck is this word? You can click on it and it will give you a translation of that word, and you can kind of fit it into your reading of the text. And most of their sort of base forms that they're going to give are the late West Saxon spelling. Like here they have yond, here, yond, whereas it's spelled G-I-O-N-D. The other thing you'll notice that wasn't present on any of the other Old English texts that we've read this far, because we were reading from manuscripts or from transcriptions of manuscripts, but Old English Aerobics marks a vowel length, for one. So they'll say when a vowel is long or short. which the manuscripts tend not to do. So that's really helpful for pronunciation purposes and for distinguishing certain words. And also it will mark when a G or a C should be palatalized. And what that means is a G, when it has this dot over it, is pronounced like a Y, a Y sound. And a C with a dot over it is pronounced with a Ch sound. And I explained these things before when we were reading other manuscripts, but this text just kind of helps you out and gives you that extra hint of how to pronounce the G in this circumstance versus another. So we'll see this G is Y here, Y, but this G is not Y, it's G. So Rod Kundra, Hada, Ye, World Kundra. So, that's a really cool thing. Also, Old English Aerobics usually also gives you some background on the text. So instead of listening to me talk about this text before, you could actually go and read on Old English Aerobics all the context, or at least some of the context for the text. If you want more detail, it's there. So if you go to oldenglishaerobics.net, you can read more detail about the text that we're going to read. I'm not going to go read it now because then I'd just be reading verbatim off of their website. I'd rather you do that yourself. Give them the view, the click, because it is a really cool website. So that's where I'm looking at this text from. Actually, both of the texts we're going to look at tonight are from, I'm looking at the Old English Aerobics version. So we're going to go ahead and get started with reading it. And I'm going to read each number at a time. And I believe the numbers are just what line it is on the manuscript. I may be mistaken, though, because a lot of these numbers look pretty conveniently put at certain grammatical boundaries, which I don't buy. I think it might just be more like sentence or clauses. That might be more of the case. I haven't looked at this actual manuscript before. I haven't been able to find a place where I can actually look at the manuscript for free. So that's another reason why we're using Old English Aerobics, is because I don't have a copy of the manuscript, or I can't find like an easily accessible web version of the manuscript to read directly from. And Old English Aerobics is a cool website anyway. So not a huge loss there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start reading. So we have Theos bok shall to wiora chastra. Okay, Theos bok shall to wiora chastra. So this book, we already saw that. Theos bok is this book. Shall is where we get the word shall from. And in Old English, it has a stronger meaning than shall. It means must, like it must happen. This thing must happen. And the thing that must happen is that it is to wiora chastra. One thing that we notice also with the word shall in Old English is a lot of the time it can be its own verb. It doesn't need a verb to help it. In English, we usually only hear shall with another verb. So I shall something. You shall what? You shall leave. You shall eat. In Old English, you could just use shall. And often the thing that's being skipped from the modern English perspective, the thing that's not needed, is often just something like be, or happen, or do, or in this case, go. So I think what this is meaning here is that this book shall go to wiora chastra. And wiora chastra, this is in the dative, wiora chastra is Worcester. So this book shall go, or shall towards, or must be for, or go to Worcester. So that's what King Alfred has written. He's written that, okay, this book is going to go to Worcester. So it's being sent. And he says, Alfred Cunning hateth greatan warfarth bishop his wordum lovliche on freundliche. Alright. So Alfred Cunning. Cunning means king. It's usually spelled with a C, but in this case it's spelled with a K, like it is in modern English. The word king, Cunning, is king. And it's related to the word kin. Kin means a people or a family. It's where we get the word kin from. And a koning is the leader of a kun, because the monarchy in England goes back to these sort of more tribal roots that we were talking about last time when we were talking about Yevera. A lot of the, not Yevera, Yereva. Sorry, that's a different word. Yereva. We were talking about how a lot of the legal structure still has remnants of an earlier tribal state. Well, kings originally were more like, warlords isn't exactly the right word, leaders of a tribe, and in the Germanic context usually, they would be warriors, like the leading warrior that would have an entourage of warriors with them, and so the koning is just the leader of the king. A lot of other words for king in Old English have a similar origin. A very common word for lord is drychten, and a drycht is a people. Drychten is the lord of the people. Another one is theoden. We saw an example of that a few weeks ago. Theod is a people, and theoden is the leader of the people, a prince or a king. So ælfréd König, King Alfred, Alfred King, haeth Gretan, Warfirth Bishop. So haeth, this is that verb hatan that we saw before in the riddles, where it says saga hwatich hate, say what I'm called. So hatan means to call. It can also mean to summon or command. Often when we're talking about a king, he's going to summon or command something to happen. So what does he command? He summons or commands Gretan. Gretan is to greet. He commands to greet, or in this case to be greeted, Warfirth Bishop. So this is Bishop Warfirth. It's the name of the bishop he's sending this book to. And bishop is bishop. In modern English, we have the same word, bishop, bishop. His wordum lovliche and freundliche. His wordum means with his words. So he's commanding, he's commanding Warfirth to be greeted with his words. What kinds of words? Lovliche and freundliche. Now, lovliche and freundliche are the origins of the words lovely and friendly, respectively, in modern English. However, they have a slightly different meaning in Old English. Freundliche less so. Freundliche does mean friendly, in a friendish manner. But lov in Old English, this is from the verb, or I guess more like the noun lovu. It can mean love in sort of the kind of sense it can mean in modern English, but its origins are in the word for worship. If you love someone, you are praising them or exalting them in some way. So they are full of love, in like a maybe Christian sense, because it's being sent to a bishop, and friendship. Here we have friendship as well, but also in respect. So that's sort of an extra layer of this word lovely here, with his words in a lovely and friendly way. He wants him to be greeted lovingly, friendlily. And we see this ond here. So this is an example of the O before the N, when we later expect an A before an N. It still means and. And in the text, it was actually written with that 7-looking thing. And the reason I suspect that is because I just happen to know Old English Aerobics tends to fill in and when it's the little 7, Tironian et, ampersand, in the text. It normalizes them, it keeps the spelling of all of them in accordance with the dialect. So because this is in the dialect of early West Saxon, we're saying ond everywhere. If this were a later one, we'd probably see and everywhere, when in the text is probably just the 7. Alright, let's go on to the next sentence. So, wait, let's actually read the first sentence, or the first full sentence here first. So, translate. King Alfred commands that, this is kind of just an indirect way of saying that he's greeting him. It's just that he's commanding him to be greeted, because this is being sent to the bishop. He's not going to go there himself. But basically, King Ælfréd is greeting Bishop Werfurth with his words, lovingly and in friendship. Good start to a letter, right? Again, it's in a book, but it's being sent to him. So that's a good start to something you're sending someone. Start of a sort of epitaph on a gift here. And then he says, "On the heaþen hata, that may come swithe oft on je mind, welche wetan, you waron jond angelkin, either je godkundra hada, je worldkundra." And I'll stop there at the comma because there's another number there. So here he's saying, "On the heaþen hata," we see hata again, "that may come swithe oft on je mind," something. So on this and, right? The is the. So to you. And to you, heaþen. Heaþen means to have awareness or to be known. How are they translating it here? Yeah, heaþen. To make known, to show. It could also mean perform in practice, but that I think is from a different root. Yeah, so to make known. So he's commanding it to be made known to you. So Ælfréd, hello, I'm Ælfréd. I'm commanding you to be greeted with words lovingly and in friendship. And I command hata, that it be made known to you, that may, to me, kom swithe oft on je mind. It comes very often. Swithe is very. Swithe oft. It comes very often in mind. Je mind here is mind or memory, but probably just mind here. It comes very often in mind. Welche wiltan you waron jond angelkin. Welche is the origin of the word which. Which, and then here, wiltan. This is an example where I was saying, usually I would just expect an I here. And here, yeah, we just have an I in their sort of gloss here. A wita, and this is just the plural of that, witan, is a wise person. So what wise people you waron jond angelkin. You means before, or used to, like in days of yore, used to be. So you waron were before, jond angelkin, throughout angelkin. And angelkin is the word for just the English people, throughout the English people. They're just translating it as the English. Angel is the Angles, like the Germanic tribe, and kin is that same word, like that is in kunning. Kin is like a people, the English people. And then he says, either je godkundra hada, je worldkundra. So either is where we get the word either. But it can mean both as well, especially when we see both. We see either, and then we have ye, and then we have another ye. This is that repeating ye that we saw before in one of our riddles. So both godkundra hada and worldkundra hada. And now what do these mean? Godkundra means sort of people of, sort of like religious people, people associated with the clergy, that kind of people. Divine, yeah. Kund means a kind. It is related to kin, actually. It's a kind of person, and this is sort of like God related. And had, this is that word that is very vague. In Old English, it's where we get the word. It's related to the word hood. Like in brotherhood or something, that hood that's sort of like the ness of something. And so it's sort of like divine people related to the divine. And worldkund is worldly. So this is sort of like a translation of sort of religious and secular people. So there were wise people throughout England, both religiously and secularly, both among the religious and the secular. So he's thinking about, it often comes to his mind, he's saying to this bishop, how many wise people there used to be in all camps, religious or secular. Onhu yesalilicha, or no, that's yesalilika, tida fa waron yond angelkid. And then yesali means joyful or happy. Yesalilika. Yesalilika is happy. This is actually where we get the word silly from. But it just means like happy. In Old English, how are they translating it? Happy, yeah. Yesalilika. Tida. A tida. Teed is a time. It's where we get the word tide from. Like a tide on the wave. Teed just means a time. It's cognate to the German word Zeit, and it means time in general. So happy times. What happy times tha waron then were throughout the English people. Tha angelkid. I did not mean to click on that again. So it often comes to my mind how many wise people there used to be in England, among the English people, both religious and secular, and what good times there used to be among the English people. Und hur tha kuningas thithone onwald havdon tas folkes on tham dawum goda on his arendorecum hier sumedon. Und hier either je hiera sibba, je hiera siodo, je hiera onwald innanbordes je hieldon. Und ak ut hiera ethel jerimdon. Alright, that was kind of long. There's a big break here between numbers there. So I just kind of kept going. So on hu tha kuningas thithone onwald havdon das folkes on tham dagum goda on his arondrecum hier sumedon. Let's stop there. And how the kings who had thone onwald. Onwald is power. It's related to waldan, to wield, to control. It's control. They had power. Thas folkes, over the people, over the folk. On thamdawum, in those days. Goda on his arendorecum hirsumedum. So how the kings that hold power over the people in those days, hirsumedon. Hirsum is an adjective. It means you are hearsome, you are obedient, you're listening, you listen to something. So they were obedient. Hirsumedon is the past tense, plural. So they were heedful, or they listened to God, Goda. That God is in the dative case. They're probably going to say that here. Dative singular. So that means to God. They listened to God on his arendorecum. An arend is a message, and an arendoreka is a messenger. God and his messengers. God and his people who work for God. So far we've had. Actually, let's finish up to 6 here. On he either je hiera sibba, je hiera siodo, je hiera onwald innanbordes je helda. And here is they, that's that plural they here. I did not mean to click on it, sorry. It's very finicky here. They either or both and where's our verb here? Yehildon. They both held their hiora is their sib. Sibba is peace, friendship, alliance. Their alliances, their peace. And hiora siodu. Siodu is like value, or how would I translate that? Yeah, it's like value, moral. How are they translating it here? Manners, morality, yeah, that kind of thing. Siodu. It's sidu. It's like a way, a custom. Their custom, so their peace and their moral compass, and their onward innanbordes. So onward again is control, power. Innanbordes. Innanbord is within your board. Board is any board. It can often in poetry it's like a shield, but in prose it's more like a literal board. So it's like within your walls. Basically, domestic control, power, power held, power or order within the country at home. Is what this is meaning here. So, and they kept peace and morality and control within their borders. Und ut hiora ethel yerimdon. And also, outside of their homeland, Ethel is homeland, Yerimdon. Yeriman is like, so Riman is measure or count, but this is sort of like pushing the count here. How are they translating it here? It's expand. Yeah, make room, expand. It's related to, actually I think it's related to room. Room is room, space. So an out their homeland made space. So expanded out their borders. So it often comes to my mind, now that we're at 6, I'll go back here. What has he said so far? Have it be known to him that it often comes to my mind how many wise people there used to be among the English, both secular and religious. And how good of times there used to be in England, and how the kings that had power in those days listened to God and his messengers and kept peace and, virtue and stability within the borders and expanded the borders. Und hu him thas speo either ye med wia ye med wisdom. Alright. On who him thas speo. There. And how him, this is him, them in the dative, because we learned in a prior session that him could be to him or to it or to them. It's just ambiguous in Old English. How to them, then speo. This verb means to flourish. How are they translating it here? To succeed. Yeah, spoon is the verb here. To succeed. That's a good translation. Spoon, to succeed. How to them it succeeded. I would say how it flourished for them. Either or both with mid wia and mid wisdom. Wia is war and wisdom is wisdom. So both with war and with wisdom, things flourished for them, or it succeeded to them. The grammar of that is a little weird here, from a modern English perspective. And then we have on the ak tha godkundan hadas hu jorna hie waron either ye imblara ye imbleorninga je ælfréd theotomas the gode don sholdon. There should be a dot there, I think, yeah, because it is sholdon. Anyways, and also that's that word holy again. The holy people at that time, how yearning, yorna is like yearning, how excited or eager they were, both, so either, yeah, again, both umblada, is sort of around or about, we could probably just use with here, with lada is where we get the word lore from. It's learning, both with learning, and learninga. So learninga is literally learning. Lada is lore. So we could go teaching, learning, teaching. They have a mutual relationship with each other, both in teaching and learning. And ælfréd theotomas. And in all of the theotom is, theo is like servant. So we saw a few examples of that last week in Yereva. Theotom is service, like a service that you need to give to someone. How are they translating it here? On English Aerobics, yeah, service, yeah, theotom. So these are services that they should do for God. Und human utan bordes wisdom und lära heder on land sohta. So und hu man utan bordes wisdom und lära heder on land sohta. So how man utan bordes. Man here does not mean man. It is related to the word man, but in Old English this word is often an indefinite pronoun that means someone, anyone, some person, one, as in one must do something, one. How one utan bordes, out of the wall. So we had innan bordes before, within the borders, like within domestic, and now we have utan bordes, which is more like foreign, someone from outside. And how one from outside, wisdom and lore, heder on land sohta. Heder is hither, so like to here, in the land, on land, sohta, sought. So how people from outside, foreigners, would seek wisdom and learning, or teaching, lore, basically, in this land. So they would come here. People used to come here to learn things, is what he's saying. I did not mean to click on that. Whoops. Und hu wehia nu sholdon uta beyetan yefwea hia haban sholdon. And how we should now uta beyetan, get them from outside. If we hear haban sholdon, if we must have them, wisdom and teaching, lore. So if you want lore and wisdom, people used to come here to England for it, but I often think about how now we need to get them from outside. We have to import wisdom and learning these days. So he greets the bishop and says, I've been thinking about how things used to be much better in England, education-wise. Kings used to be doing better with obeying God. Religious ministers used to do better with teaching and learning, and people used to come here to learn. But now we have to we have to outsource for wisdom and lore. Why open with that? Well, he's opening this book with this message, his opinion here. So he says, Swa klana hier was othalenu on angelkunne that swida fawa waron behionon humbra the hiora theninga kuden understandon on English. Och det får de an ärengerurit on ladena on English arrechan. On each wene that the nocht mania beyondan humbra naren. So I'll stop there. So he says, so klana. Swa, here, swa is so. Klana is like, it can mean a few different things. Sort of, it is where we get the word clean from in modern English, but it has a few different senses in Old English, and I actually kind of want to see what they say entirely. Yeah, entirely makes sense here. You could say overwhelming for klana as well. That also makes sense here. But yeah, swa klana hio was othaleno on angelkunne. So fully, heo was. It's heo here. Heo means she. It's a feminine pronoun here. But who's she? Well, we'll figure it out. Othaleno is the decay. And here it's in a past participle form. A decline. So declined, feminine, it's marked for feminine here, was declined. Was she declined on angelkunne? That swida fawa waron behionon humbra the hiora theninga kuden. So the heo here, I want to say, is lar, I think, because lar is feminine. So learning, teaching. And that makes sense because of what he's about to go on to say. So the she here is learning because learning is feminine. So entirely was its decay, it being learning. That's why we're using feminine pronoun here, she. In England, among the English people, that swida fawa waron behionon humbra the hiora theninga kuden understanden on English. That, where are we? That so, or very few, there were. Behionan. Behionan means like sort of from here. Well, heonan means like hence or from here. Behionan has this be prefix on it, so it's like on this side of, yeah. From here, on this side of, or around here, of Humbra, the Humber River. So Northumbria was a region in England that was north of the Humber, and he's talking about on this side of the Humber, because in these days, north of the Humber River was mostly Danish territory at this time. So he's mostly talking about this side of the Humber. That Thehiora Theninga couldn't understand in English. That could understand. Whoa, did not mean to scroll up there. Couldn't, that may have been able to. Couldn't. Understand. Heora Theninga. Their thening. And thening here is a, they're translating it as service. I would call it more like a practice. Their practice or their service. I guess service makes sense. If we're talking about religious service here, like a ritual or something. Couldn't understand on English. So there were so few people on this side of the Humber River who can understand services, even in English. Og det fordom an ærendgjøret on ladene on English arrechan. Or therefore, one ærendgjøret, we saw ærend means message. A gjøret is a piece of writing, so a message, a letter. Of ladene on English, from Latin into English, arrechan. Arrechan is to translate. So, or translate one letter from Latin into English. So few people can do that anymore, is what he's saying. On each wena thatte nocht monia beyondan humra naden. So we had behionan on this side, and then we have beyondan, beyond, on the other side of the umber. Naden. That's ne wadon. But it's wadon. Subjunctive, hypothetical there. So there are so few that can understand Latin. And he believes there aren't many on the other side of the Humber River either. Oh, I just saw that I have messages in the chat. Sorry, I've been so in deep with this that I have not actually seen any of these messages. Sorry about that. Let me catch up with these. Oh, goodness. These are great. I need to read these out. Is it okay, chat, if I read some of these out? Person in the chat who said this? Oh, you're saying really important. Okay. Yeah, so first we have some interpretation of what ælfréd is saying. He's saying, now we've got all these cringe fail kings who are bad at following God's will. Very true. Okay, so far, this is somebody back in my day. Yes. That is what ælfréd is doing right now. But he's about to explain why he's translated this piece of writing into English. He's writing to a bishop, and he's trying to preface, like, why write this text in English? Aren't texts supposed to be written in Latin? He's going to justify why he's written it in English. Can you repeat the word where the word silly came from? I didn't have access when you first said that. Oh yeah, I will go back to silly in a second. Oh, nice. I didn't have... Okay. Not seeing lots of dust on this letter. Chanting that you want dust. Yeah, so I called this dusty letters because they're old, but I explained earlier I was not able to find actual manuscript copies of these, unfortunately. They're not open access. I can't find an open access version. If I can, we can switch to that. Photoshop some dust on there. I'll try to find a filter for OBS next time to do a cool dust effect, maybe. I have something kind of different planned for next time that will also involve letters, but they'll be even older and dustier than the Old English ones. So, yeah. There might be some sand in the other ones, too, if you want a hint to what we're going to be looking at. So, it's not a hint at all. So, silly. Let me go back to that, yeah, because I did kind of breeze through that pretty quickly. This is this word, yesali. Or just Sally. Sally means happy. And he was talking about happy days, right? He's being very back in my daying. So yeah, Sally used to mean happy. Sal meant sort of like better. Salera is better. And it kind of has changed meaning from happy to silly. So we can maybe imagine some ways that semantic shift happened. Where were we? Yes, so he's talking about how things used to be better back when people, back when education was better in England. Now things have kind of deteriorated. And in large part, he doesn't say so here. I don't know of a place where he does say so, but what a lot of scholars think he's referring to is the fact that with the Danish invasion that's happening in the 800s, a lot of monasteries and other places of learning have been not operating to full capacity as they used to be because they're afraid that they're going to be looted by Vikings. And what ælfréd is in large part credited with is preventing England from being invaded by the Danes. So what he's saying is, okay, now that we've settled things with the Danes and things are kind of settled down, let's get back to increasing literacy to some extent, getting more learning in. And so he's going to explain why that means he's translated this into English, because why would you need to translate something into English for this to be the case? Well, he's going to explain rather soon. So he's just saying here, I doubt there are many people who can actually translate something from Latin. We're going to actually skip forward a bit, because we're not going to read this entire piece, and I said that earlier. It's pretty long. I just want to look at some highlights. He is going to kind of allude to part of the reason for the decay in education in a second. He says, An forthon each the yebiode, that thu do swa each yeleva that thu wille, that thu this a world thinga, to tham ya amatie, swa thu oftas maya. Oh wait, no, I'm going to skip this part too. This doesn't really get to the point. Let's go to 16 here. There we go. So he's considering all these things. How education used to be better, kings used to obey God more, and all this stuff. And then he says, Tha each tha this al yemunda, tha yemunda each ak, hu each yaseh artham thehit al for heriod, wara, on for barned, hu tha Chirichan jond al angelkun stod on mathma on boka je filda on ak michel menio goddess thewa. So he says, when I, considered all this, when I was thinking about all this, I'll bring that back, epic Christian monarchy. Yeah, well, he is a Christian monarch, so yeah. He would be for that. It didn't really go away. He just consolidated a lot of the power. So when I thought about this is Yemun on here, to think about, remember. When I thought about all this, remembered all this, I also thought Yemun de each ak. I remembered also how I saw each yasah. I saw ad thamte hit el for hergod wara on for Bernard. Before, when it was all, for Herod is like Herod, attacked, destroyed. How are they translating it here? Yeah, harried is the word I use too. Messed up were on for Bernard, burned through. Before they were all burnt down. So when I thought about all this, I also remembered how I saw before it was all burned down, how the churches, Chirichan, the churches, thank you, chat. Yeah, we need to bring back forherian as a verb. It's a very good verb. Good to do at the end of a long week, as you say, yeah. How the churches jond al angelkin stod on mathma on boka je filda. So how the churches, so before they were all burnt down to a crisp, I remembered how the churches used to stand. Stodan is they stood. The churches throughout England stood mathma on boka je filda, filled with mathams, treasures, and books. Filled to the brim with books and treasures, and ak, and also michel menio goddess thewa, and many servants of God. So there were lots of monks around, books around, treasures around, and then they all got burnt down by Vikings. So he's like, okay, so I remember things used to be better. Why were they better? People listened to God, people learned and taught. Why? Well, they had all these books. But they all got burnt down. So now we're in this situation. Yeah, we all remember things used to be better. Thank you, chat. Yeah. Things tend to be better before they're burnt down. We all miss the resplendent churches. Well, I wouldn't say that early Anglo-Saxon churches were resplendent, but they did have books, in Latin. Well, so the issue now is that people don't read anymore because there aren't books to read, and the literacy has gone down. So let's skip forward, and then he says, Tha ich tha this munda. That's how he began the last paragraph too. Tha wundrade ich. SMH always using their phones. Well, no, there actually aren't phones to replace the books. Is the problem. They're just Vikings wearing pants of all things. That's the hot trend in England at this time, is Vikings wearing pants. We're actually the other letter we're gonna read is about Danish fashion, in both senses of the word fashion. Yeah. So when I remembered this, I wondered Swede. Swede is very. This is very, very. So it's like extremely. Thara godina witana, theyu waron yond angulkun. I remembered all the great, wise people that there used to be in England. On tha beach, ala ye fullan ye lernod havdon. And they had all fully learned from the books. Thathia hiora thought nana dal noldon on hia ayana yethioda wenda. All those books, they didn't wish to translate them. Wendan is to change, but in the context of language, yethioda is language. They didn't. Hiora thought nana dal, no deal, none of them, not one deal or portion. Noldon, ne woldon. They didn't want to translate them into their own language. They were just, all these monks with all their books and learning were content to just leave it in Latin, because that's the language you used for education at the time, was Latin. Ich tha sona eft meselvum anwurda, unquath. So I immediately answered back to myself, and said, Hierne wendon, thata avremen sjoldon swa rechlase, werthan, on seolar swa othalan. So they didn't ever opine, wenan is to opine, that ever should men so, rechelas is reckless, careless, become so careless, and so forsaken, or so allowed to decay their lore. So they never thought that people would just let the language die. They also didn't expect Vikings to show up and burn stuff down. Forthara wilnunga hia hit forletan. For that desire, they forletan. They let it be. They held back from thinking about translating it. Here they say abandon, release. Yeah, they didn't bother to translate it. On Woldon thather thumara wisdom on landa wara the wemaya theode kudon. They wanted that here in this land, more wisdom in the land were through us, coming to know more languages. They were like, oh, we'll keep the stuff in Latin because that way people will learn Latin. If we keep it in Latin, that will encourage people to learn Latin in order to read books instead of, just not putting in the time to learn another language. That's what all the monks with their books were thinking at the time. But then Alfred says, Tha ich tha this aliamunda. Then when I considered this again, all of these paragraphs start with that. Hu seo awas arist on ebreish yethio defunden, on eft, tha hia kreakas jelernodon, tha wendon on hia on hera ayen yethio de ala, on the ak ala of the beg. Or bech, sorry, bech is the plural of books. Book, I didn't actually touch on this. Bech is the plural of book, Bok is book, B-O-C, with a long O. That's where we get the two O's in book. And the plural was beech, B-E-E-C. It was a palatal C, like a ch sound. So book was one of those words that's like goose, geese. Once upon a time it was like book beak, but it was book beech because there was a change that happened. And if you ever heard of a beech tree, it's actually related, like beech. The word, in some analyses, it's actually related etymologically to book. Originally, book meant like a scroll that you would write on, like a piece of paper that you might get from a tree, for example. I have a question in the chat that I'm ignoring right now. Anyway. Apologies. Where were we? So let me translate what he said here. So we talked about book, beech. Bring back beech as the irregular plural of book, please. I'm so on that train. So then, he says, then I remembered, considering this, how the law here, is law. It's a very good reaction to law, I think, as well. Was an old word for law here, yeah. And when he says law, he means, like, just the Bible, probably. You know, laws we should abide by like kings. So he remembers how the law was first on hebreische theodafunden, was first founded in Hebrew. Hebreisch is Hebrew. So then I remembered how the law was first established in Hebrew. Okay. Remember that he's explaining the whole situation. So we had all these books, things were great, people were educated, but the old monks who had all these books, they didn't think to translate it into Latin. They thought, you know, if we keep it in Latin, people will want to learn Latin, and people will be, you know, all these smart multilingual geniuses, and they'll learn Latin and learn the information that way. They didn't expect all this stuff to be burnt down, and then all these people to, you know, not have access to education anymore. So he's making an interesting point here. People used to not translate stuff. Everything was in Latin, and then things burnt down, and now no one can read Latin or even English. People don't know the rituals they're supposed to follow, etc. And he's just recalling, you know, monks had a reason to not translate things. They wanted people to be multilingual, smart geniuses. But then I remembered how the law was first written in Hebrew. It was first found in Hebrew, and then when the Greeks learned it, then they translated all of it into their own language. They translated it into Greek. And all the other books. So they translated everything into Greek when they learned about, you know, the law that is inherited through Christianity. they translated stuff into their own language. Und eft ladenwara swasama. Sedan hier jelörnodon, hier wendon ælfríc wiza, werkstodas on hiera aien yethioda. So, the Ladenwara, the Latin people, the Romans, when they learned of it, like the same thing happened. They changed or translated all through wiza werkstodas. Werkstodas are, werk means foreign, and stod, in this context, it's like translators, wise translators, translated it into their own language. So the Latin, there's no good reason why it should all be in Latin. The Latin was translated from the Greek, and the Greek was translated from the Hebrew. Und alla övriga kristna theoda sumna dal hiora on hiora ayen theoda wendon. So all these other Christian peoples translated it into their own language. For thu, me thinketh betra, if io swa thinketh, that we summa bech, that the ned betharvosta, sien, alum monum to wetona, that we tha on that theoda wenden, the we alak yeknawan mayan. Therefore, for this reason, it seems to me, methinketh, methinks, that's where methinks comes from, methinketh, it seems to me better, if you swa thinketh, if it seems to you the same, if you thinks the same, that we also summa bech thatheniod betharvosta sian alumanum to wetona that we tha on that yethioda wenden. So that we should also translate those books which are most niad betharvosta, the most needful, most required for all people, alumanum to wetona, for all people to know. All those books that are the most important, we should also translate those into that language that we all may know, that we all may understand. We should make it more accessible by having all the literature in English as well. Like, they had a reason for wanting it to be in Latin, so that people would be big-brained and learn Latin in order to get educated. But given the circumstances and the fact that there's precedent for translating things into our own language, we should do the same. We should translate stuff into English so that people can understand it in English as well. Onjedon swawe swida the mawan mid goddess fultima. So he goes on. We don't need to read all of this here. But basically his argument is people don't really learn Latin to the same extent as they used to for loads of reasons. One of them being, things have burnt down, but also just generally people are less interested in learning Latin. And those who do don't learn it very well anymore. So I have taken it upon myself to translate this text, which we're not actually going to read the text. It starts here, goes into some poetry, but I've translated it into English, and I think we should do that with a lot of works because people don't really speak Latin anymore, and it would be more accessible anyway if it were in English. And localizing things into the native language has precedent. It's not like we're violating the text by not having it in Latin anymore. So that is King Alfred's argument, and he goes on to translate a lot of things into Old English, and he's the reason why we have a lot of Old English texts, actually. That's another reason why he's called Alfred the Great, because he gave us a lot of stuff to work with in Old English. So that is his, it's the preface to his translation for Gregory's pastoral care, regulae pastoralis is what it's called, or curae pastoralis, which we're not actually going to read. It was written by Pope Gregory the First, and he's translating it because, he wants everyone to be able to read it. And by everyone, usually that still means the clergy, because they're the ones who can read. But what he's saying is, even the clergy don't really speak Latin anymore, or at least not very well. Latin literacy has gone down, and it will be more accessible to people who read if it were in English. So that's the first thing for us today. I don't know if there are any more questions about this. If you want to learn more about this text, they have more background on it at oldenglishaerobics.net. The link to both of the things we read today will be in the description of the stream once the stream archive is up, and also on the YouTube video once that's up as well. So there will be access to this. If you forget Old English Aerobics, that will be there. So that is our first text. I plan for one other thing to read today, and the next one is actually kind of funny in my opinion. So we're going to read it. And it is often, so it's a letter from an abbot, Abbot ælfríc of Ensham, I believe is the name of the person who wrote it. And it's a letter to Brother Edward, brother like as in another monk, who's gone to live with some people in the sort of Danish occupied part of England, around similar time frame as ælfréd writing here. And here it is. It's also an Old English Aerobics, though they don't have the background information for this one. It's just the text. And it's rather short, which is nice. And some people call it on Danish fashion. And we're going to see what the Abbot ælfríc thinks of Danish fashion. When we say fashion, we mean not just clothing, but general behavior, customs, that kind of thing. So, we're going to go ahead and get started on this. But actually, I'm going to take a quick break. About, I want to say, 2 minutes. I just needed to take a breather because I've been reading and talking all day. So I'm going to take a few minutes break here. In the meantime, I wonder if chat has any questions about what we just read, or about something else, some other yesterlore thing. Okay, no questions. I'm excited to read Danish fashion. I really like this text. But yeah, I'm going to pause video for a second. And I will be right back. Alright, we're back. Let me know if that sound is too big. Too loud, I mean. I think my video is frozen. Strange. Yes, it is frozen. Thank you, chat. I'm gonna end the video capture, I think, and then just restart it. Yes, I'll just add it back from scratch. Might be weird for a second. It's going to be large. There we go. Yeah, that's rather large. Let's not be taking up the entire screen. Thanks. There we go. Cool. Okay. That's better. Slightly. There we go. Cool. So, actually, I'm going to bring this side in too. Alright, let's get back into reading. We're going to read something different now. So like I said, this is Abbot ælfríc, writing to Abbot Edward. And it's going to be rather scathing. There is a little bit more context I can give. The Old English Aerobics doesn't have a little context section like they typically do here. But a lot of scholars think that this is a response to something Edward wrote to ælfríc. It's not just unsolicited ire being directed towards ælfríc, or towards Edward. Scholars think that probably Edward asked for sort of advice or a review of conduct or something like that from ælfríc, who's the abbot. So he sort of has a higher rank monastically than just a brother, like a member of a monastery. So it's not unsolicited. Most people think. We don't have the letter that was supposedly sent, but it just makes a lot of sense that this wasn't just unsolicited. I don't want to go too much into it, and I actually don't know all the details about that. But that hopefully gives a little bit more context for why this is being so critical, because there is some criticism here, heavy criticism. So, Edward is among the Danish now, and we're going to see what ælfríc thinks of what's happened. So, Ich segja ælfréd bróðir Edward, nú þú með þessas bæði, that ég doth unrichtlicha, that ég það englishan þáas forlatað, the eure fadres heldon, and heaþenra manna þáas luviath, the ælfas lífes ne unnon. And we'll stop there at the number. So he says, Ich segja ælfréd. I say also to you. Or I say back to you. So ak we've seen a few times now. It means also. Or additionally. So this is a kind of one of our hints that like probably this was prompted in some way. So I say back to you, Brother Edward. Nú þú með þessas bæði. Now that you've asked me, you bade me to do this. That ég doth unrichtlicha. That you do unrightly. You do unrightly. You're doing poor things. That ég það englishan þáas forlatað. The eure fadres heldon. That you þáas englishan. So the English thouas. A thou is a custom or a habit. And another thing you might notice is the ye here. Ye is ye. It's a plural. So it could be addressing Brother Edward and the monks with him. It could be formal, like formal you. But use of formal you, like plural, TV kind of distinction, isn't widely attested in this early of English. It's possible. But I think more likely that it is, it's a plural here. So it means like you all. Oh, hello? Sorry, we have a guest here. Oh, we have a guest. This is my dog. He wants attention. So, yeah. I thought that he'd show up. Here. Hello. The real scholar is here, yes. Let him translate. Chat says let him translate. What do you think of Danish fashion? Not for you? Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, no, he walked away. He doesn't want it. Oh no, he's back. He's back. All right. So true. His word is gospel to me. Yeah. Well, we're gonna see what we're on about in a second. So, so you do unrightly that you fa English and theos forlata. You release or abandon the English customs that your fathers held, that your ancestors held. You've abandoned your cultural practices. And heaþen ramanna theos luviath the eothas lives ne unnon. Okay, heaþen ramanna theos means customs of heathen people. Because the Danish, before conversion, were not Christian. They were pagan. So they were practicing heathenry. So you've forsaken the English ways, and now you luviath heaþenra manna theos. You love, or like I said earlier, luvian can also be sort of like worship or respect. You follow, or you love, you're enamored with the heathen ways of doing things. Theophas lives ne unnon. So the ways of heathen people, who you fas lives ne unnon, who do not grant you of your life, who do not grant you your life. Unnon is to grant, or to give, or to allow, and it takes a genitive, like a possessive object, so of your life. So they don't wish you well. They don't even want you to be alive, so why would you follow their ways? Argues Bishop ælfríc. ælfríc. Why are you going with them and doing their heathen stuff when they don't even respect you or want you to live, and abandoning your sort of English customs that your fathers held? On midtham jesvuteliath that ye forseoth ewer kin and eure ildran midtham unthawum, thon ye him on teonan tusliath eo on danish, ableridum neckan and ablendum aum. Okay, we're gonna stop there for now. So on midtham jesvuteliath, so on midtham, and with all that, with those things, jesvuteliath, jesvutelian means like you show forth. How are they translating it here? You reveal, yeah, you prove. You prove that ye forseoth, that you forsake ewer kin, your people, and ewer ildran, your elders, midtham unthawum, with these uncustoms. This is one way that you can say sins. It's like misconduct, uncustom. How dare you forsake your kin and your elders with these sins, following these heathens. Thone yehim on teon tusliath eo on danish. When you him on teonan, so when you basically you're hurting them. Teonan here is to insult here. To insult or to anger or to injure them. You do them harm. Tusliath eo on Danish. Tuslian means to wear. or to dress oneself. Tusliath eo, you dress yourself on Danish. In Danish. You dress yourself in Danish. You wear Danish stuff. Danish fashion. Abledum knekkan and ablendum eum. So with abledum knekkan, necks, knekkan is necks. Abledum is like open to outside. They're translated as bare. That makes sense. Yeah, bare necks. And ablendum eum, blind eyes. So it's how they wore their hair. So often, like a common, yeah, this dude hates Danish fashion, I think. Yeah, it was if we look at like art of Danes from this time, we see that there's this common haircut where the hair in the back will be sort of cut rather high. Like, so there's no hair on your neck, so you have a bare neck. Thanks, chat. But their hair in the front would be kind of like longer. So like, it was like a kind of a do that they would wear, where the back would be short and the front would be longer. Reverse mullet, yeah, basically, kind of. I can try to find some pictures of that actually. Let's see. I'm gonna look for a picture. What I'm specifically picturing is on the Bayeux tapestry, which depicts the Norman invasion of England in 1066, which is a while after this. The Normans were, they lived in France and they spoke Norman French, but they were originally sort of a settlement of Vikings, I think from Norway, not Denmark, but still a similar hairdo, as is described here, is found on those. I think the Normans were a similar hairdo, and that's what I'm particularly picturing from the Bayeux tapestry. I'm going to try to find a picture from the Bayeux tapestry of that hair. It's just because OBS takes up a lot of bandwidth, things are taking a while to load. Let's see. Can I bring it into this window? Yeah, let's see. All right. Here's a clipping from the Bayeux tapestry. And this is the hair that I'm talking about. So if we zoom in, we see in the back, it's cut short. You can like see the back of their head. So they have a bare neck, but their hair goes over, like they have sort of like bangs in the front. They go over. And this is what it sounds like ælfríc is describing this kind of hair. Bare necks and blind eyes. Not a fan of this hairstyle. How dare Brother Edward and his ilk be wearing this obscene heathen fashion? He's injuring his kin. He's abandoning his culture and his family and the ways of God by wearing that ugly hairdo, in ælfric's opinion. Neseja ich na mara embatha shandlikan tuslinga. Buton that us sejath bech that se beo amansumod the havenra manna theawes hilt on his liva and his iron kin unwurdath midtham. Okay. So he says, now that he's tore into this awful Danish hairstyle, it's not too late to make a joke. Bare necks, blind eyes can't lose. Yeah. Yeah, so now that he's like just completely dragged the hairstyle that these Danes wear, and that Edward is kind of like copying in a ungodly, un-English manner, assimilating into these heathen ways, he's gonna say, Neseji ich namara. Emathasandikan tuslinga. Now I will say no more. It's neseji ich namara. I'm not going to say it no more. Emba, about, or on the topic of Thashanlikan tuslinga. I will say no more about this shanlik, the shameful tuslinga. Tuslian we saw means to dress yourself, so tuslinga is wearing fashion in terms of what you wear. I'm not going to say any more about this shameful fashion, this absolute loss of good fashion sense. I'm not going to say any more about this. Buton, except, but, for, that us sejaf bech, that books tell us, that sebeo amansumod, that he is cursed. Mansum is cursed. He's cursed. Who haeþen ramanna thawas hilt, who holds heathen, the customs of heathen men. So he who holds heathen men's customs is cursed. On his leva. On his leva, on his ayenkin unwurdath midtham. So he's cursed in his life. On his leva. On his ayenkin and his own kin, his own family. Unwurdath midtham. His own family will be unwurdath, unworthened, basically ashamed with him. So if you are following heathen ways, your whole family is kind of dishonored by this. So he who follows heathen ways is cursed in his life, and his own family is cursed with him, is shamed with him. So basically, stop doing it. Stop dressing like these heathens. Stop wearing this awful hairdo, and being all Dane-like. OMG, stop. Basically, your soul will be damned if you keep wearing this reverse mullet. Stop it. That is ælfríc's point, actually. He just cannot abide by these Danish hairstyle choices. And that's why I chose this one. I thought this one was kind of fun. Fashion crimes. Literally, he uses the word unthawum, which can be translated as sin. I just wanted to look at this sinful hairstyle one more time. Unthaw. Thou is custom, unthaw is sin. I wonder how they translate it. Yeah, vice, sin. Fashion, sin. Yeah, it's like cinema sins. Fashion sins. with Abbot ælfríc. Honestly, the hairstyle is a little sinful. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I've seen some people wear it nowadays. I've actually seen it on people. And not just Viking reenactors. Although some Viking reenactors do this hairstyle too. But it's interesting how strongly this abbot, who is known for writing a lot of other texts. He's known for translating some biblical texts. He's written some homilies and some other important texts in Old English. He's a pretty well, prolific for an Anglo-Saxon named author. It's interesting to see that he also has very strong opinions on fashion and what they mean for the souls of other monks who try to do this. I've seen some very cool punks with this look. I take it back. The abbot's a coward. Yeah. Calling this sinful is just cowardly, I think. That's my editorialization here. I think it's an interesting hairstyle. I think it could be. People can work it really nicely. And so what if it's heathen? He would not agree, being an abbot. He would not agree with that. But I think this heathen look is pretty awesome. So that's his opinion on Danish fashion. He doesn't talk about pants. We do have some later documents about pants and about how frequently Danes combed their hair. and bathed that made them more attractive than local English people to Anglo-Saxon women. There are some people who complained about that in the 1200s. We're not going to read that text today. I don't have a copy of it, although it is pretty funny. It just seems like the Danes were the fashion-forward people in England at this time, and the English establishment were just very unhappy with it, and so they were saying, that's sinful. Kids these days with their Danish haircuts and their not reading Latin anymore. Yeah. So, that is our reading for today. I said that tonight's yesterlore would probably end a little bit early because it only had 2 texts to read, but I hope this was still fun. Let's look at the hairdo one more time because it is pretty cool. Yeah, so I hope everyone had fun looking at these 2 texts. We kind of breezed through a lot of the preface to the book because it is long and I don't want to have to read through all of it. But we saw some sort of justification for translating things into Old English. That Ælfréd was thinking about making things more accessible to more people in academic spheres, at least, by making things translated in English, which was pretty cool for the late 800s. And we saw that fashion can be viewed as a sin by some people, now and in the past. People still have very strong opinions on fashion to this day, although maybe we put less existential weight on it these days. Came away from it with hairstyle inspiration and a reminder that things were so much better in the good old days when kings were good at listening to God. Good. At least one of those takeaways I do support. The hairstyle one, if that's not clear. Yeah, so the good king, the God king one. No. Yeah, the hairstyle one. Yes, so that is all for tonight. Next week we'll look at some more letters, but, well, they might not be letters, but they will be pieces of writing, and they will be old, maybe even dusty, although maybe also some sand. We're going to look at some very old stuff. It will not be in Old English, but I hope it will be exciting and fun nonetheless. So thank you everyone who made it tonight, and anyone who's watching this in the future. I hope you have a great rest of your time, whatever time of day or night it may be, and I hope you all have a great time deciding how you're going to wear your hair tomorrow. And maybe have considered some options for how to wear your hair in order to anger some West Saxon abbots. Alright, farewell everyone. Thank you.